Tighten up.
Yep.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching the Tasty Pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever is on your mind, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, it is all on the tables. We now bring in Dave Palumbo. Dave, so yesterday, again, we tested out after hours going live. Yeah. And it was another one of those episodes where I think we had 12 people on the show, but
I don't know if it was that many. There was a lot of people, but it was good.
You know the funniest part about the show, and again, is it's now essentially the third live show that we do during the course of the week. Yeah, you start to have these little factions in the comment section. You start to have these little civil wars brewing. It's the funniest thing, and then you have people clamoring for ex-Whack Pack members to jump into the shows. But good times as always, and of course that episode live right now on the RX Muscle channel. This past week actually was a pretty busy week. It was not just busy because we had 2 pro shows. We had the Tsunami Pro, the Legion Sports. But then, obviously, maybe the biggest news coming out of the weekend was Michael Krizo, a.k.a. Krizo, getting his pro card. We did reach out to him, seeing if he was willing to come on for an interview. But, he was very upfront that, as far as doing a one-on-one interview, his English is exactly not that strong. So, perhaps if he does qualify for the Olympia, if we see him in person, hopefully we'll have someone there that we can translate and we could get him in person. But we've been getting a lot of questions throughout the course of the week, just in terms of what you saw out of Krizo before we start the questions. What do you see? Again, this is someone that has competed, quote unquote, professionally in another division, but obviously now, as an IFBB pro, still with a shot to go to the Olympia. What do you see out of him right now? And in quick summation, how do you see him projecting at the pro level?
He obviously dominated and easily won that show. Was he at his best? No, but he didn't need to be his best to win that show. Now, he's going to be competing in 3 weeks, so ostensibly he's going to look the best he can in 3 weeks. Now, the scuttlebutt out there is that he was purposely not peaking for the show and he was just going to walk through it. And I don't believe that because you never know who shows up. No one in their right mind will get on a stage not looking their best, or at least trying to look their best. Sometimes you miss a peak or something doesn't go right, you get sick or so, and then you're not at your best. But I don't know many people that are going to do a pro qualifier, which is, he's got a plan. He wanted to get his pro card. He wanted to win a pro show and go to the Olympia. Given those 3 steps and how vital they were with the time frame he set up for himself, I can't see him risking not winning the show. So my personal internal belief is that maybe something wasn't timed right. He did look really good. Wasn't like the best we've seen him. So, and I don't believe that was by intention, by any means whatsoever. But I do think that they must have learned what might have gone wrong or wasn't, perfect, and then they'll correct that. And then in 3 weeks, I think we're going to see a much, much better Michael Krizo. And I think that there's a very good chance for him to win that show and qualify to go to the Olympia. That's what we all want to see. Even the judges want to see that. So, if it's close, he'll probably win. If it's not close and he comes in off, like he did this, the past week, he's not going to win that show at 90%. He's got to be 100%. You want to be at 100% because he wants to go in there, win the show decisively, kind of like what Andrew Jack did, so that people now talking about him as a dangerous guy. If he goes in there and doesn't look his best and just barely wins the show, people are going to be like, nah, he's not that good. Maybe he was, he's not as good as advertised. So I think it's important momentum-wise and to establish himself as a guy who's a consummate professional, that he's going to show up at his best, dominate that show, win it, go to the Olympia with a lot of momentum riding behind him. And then I think we're going to be talking about Michael Krizo a lot, heading into that final 6-week or 7-week prep into the Olympia.
Let's go to our questions. The first 2 questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, do you have a protocol in which you suggest using IGF while still taking GH?
There's a lot of research out there that shows that IGF and GH work better together. I don't really know why, because growth hormone is kind of like a master hormone. It's produced by the pituitary gland. So it does have a direct fat burning and fat mobilizing effect, but its growth effect actually is indirectly by inducing or stimulating the liver to produce IGF-1. So if you took IGF-1 with GH, I don't know why there'd be a synergism other than the fact that maybe you get more IGF release, because the GH causes the liver to produce some IGF-1 and then the IGF-1 you're taking. So off season, what I used to do back in the day is I would do IGF-1 when I had it available with, if I needed some insulin, I would use it with insulin. I wouldn't use GH because I found that I felt like the GH made me very insulin resistant. It was hard for me to gain weight because I had a very fast metabolism. Now, if I didn't have such a fast metabolism, I probably would have used the 2 together. And you probably could use less GH because you're using the IGF-1 with it. The thing with IGF-1 is your body acclimates to it really fast. So you can't use it continuously. So my protocol is 10 to 20 micrograms per day post-workout, 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, rotating like that. So you could either take it the whole time with GH or maybe on the off weeks, take the GH. That's something to think about. Pre-contest, you wouldn't take IGF-1 because it has an insulin-like effect. So when you take it, it's going to drop your blood sugar. Not something you really want to do while you're dieting, right? Because then you're going to want to eat more. So I don't feel like, also you're growing very much, while in contest, I guess you could say diet form. So I always tell people to save the IGF-1 for the off season. Pre-contest, use the GH alone, with whatever anabolics you're using as well. I don't hear you, Sid.
I muted it because I had that sneeze coming on, and I was like,
okay, all right.
All right, I think I'm good. Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app: is there a benefit to taking your oral anabolic with fats or something like grapefruit, as an example?
Not really. A lot of guys take the orals on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, and they get absorbed pretty rapidly that way. If it bothers your stomach, yeah, you could take it with food. You're really not going to enhance its absorbability by combining it with food, however. At least that's not in my experience. Now, there might be a couple esoteric research articles out there that suggest that, but I haven't seen it in real life. Most people, it doesn't really matter when you take the stuff. I mean, you can take it before beds. I know a lot of guys take it before bed because a lot of these orals like Anadrol and Dianabol can kill your appetite. So a lot of times you take it before bed, let it work while you're sleeping as a rejuvenation type of or rebuilding of muscle type of while you're sleeping. That seems to work really well. And then when you wake up in the morning, maybe your appetite is not quite as blunted. What I usually suggest people do is spread the orals out throughout the day. And once again, it doesn't matter, whether you take it with food or not, because unless it bothers your stomach. Now, the Dave Palumbo Experience app, just real quickly, these questions came from that. It's $29 a month. You get basically me in your pocket as your coach, all my articles and videos I've ever done in one place. We put up a workout every single week, and the president's calling me. Put up a workout every single week, and I answer everyone's questions in a public forum so everyone sees the questions and the answers, which is awesome, and we do a Q&A video every week. So you get another Ask Dave only exclusively for the app members. And people really like this because it's a way of them having their questions answered by someone that they trust, someone that they know is going to give them good information. And it's my way of giving back. Sure, I'm making a few bucks on the app. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's my way of giving all my information that I provide in a concise place and allowing people who maybe can't afford coaching to be able to ask questions from someone that at least they know the answers are going to be, science-based and not just bro science. So guys, check it out at the Android store or the iTunes store, depending on what phone you have.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. As mentioned yesterday, we went live again with After Hours. We're trying out the new format just to see, obviously, if the show's we're going to get around the censor board, if you know what I mean. But nonetheless, so we do that live. We do our new show, Iron Therapy, live generally on Mondays. This past week and the next week, actually, were pre-recorded. This past week, we had an exclusive interview with Ryan Piana, the brother of the late Rich Piana. So, I mean, really, if you're a fan of Rich Piana, and really who wasn't, never before told stories, a unique perspective that you will not get anywhere else from his brother, and just some stories about how he has coped with the passing of Rich, things that he, has found out, over the course of after Rich passed away, but then also just, stories about Rich Piana in his earlier years, how eventually he transitioned, not only into bodybuilding, but becoming the personality that eventually we knew him as. So really insightful conversation with Ryan Piana, and then of course, Leslie Timball, kind of stirring the conversation in a manner where, there was a healing component to it, as is the function of the show. So again, that show, and then of course, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. Very busy weekend this past weekend in terms of competitions, as we just discussed. All that and more on RxMuscle.com and the YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button. As always, we appreciate all of your support. Couple of Dorian questions to get us started. What makes the flat barbell bench press dangerous that a lot of bodybuilders stay away from it? Dorian has said he would prefer decline bench.
I didn't like the decline bench at all. I didn't really feel like, I don't really feel anyone ever has a weak lower pec. So everyone's weakness seems to be up here. Or at least you can never have too big of an upper chest. I always tell people that as well. So I always tell people to try to do things on an incline. So, but not like a steep incline, not a 45 degree, more like a 30-degree incline. I do all my dumbbell presses that way. If there's an incline bench in the gym that's that way, I'll use it, or I'll actually put a plate underneath the front of the bench to lift it up so that it's less of an incline, because I just feel like it's a better movement. Now, the problem with the bench press has always been that when you're in that flat position, it kind of like dislocates your shoulder when you're pressing. It's just a weird biomechanical movement. So it's not great for your shoulders, but that's one of the powerlifting, movements. So everyone always just does that. What I found was early in my career, just learning how to bench press was really good on a flat bench because it's easier, I think. Once you go to the incline, you have to be really careful not to use your front delts. And a lot of people cheat with front delts, especially if the bench is too steeply inclined. It almost becomes like a front press. So you got to be very careful of that. I think that's a big mistake that people make. You really have to make sure your chest stays up, your elbows out to the side, and really squeeze. And, when those upper pecs fail and you start to feel like you want to kind of use your front delts, you have to just stop the movement. That's it. If you cheat to try to get 2, 3, 4 more reps out, you will always cheat with your front delts and you'll never actually grow pecs. You have to stop when the pecs are no longer lifting that weight. That was the key that I found that really helped pec development. I kept my form. I had my training partner maybe help with a rep or so, but once I felt like my upper pecs were just shot and I couldn't use them anymore, that was it. I stopped the set. You don't just try to get more reps using any method possible. That's not a good thing. But once again, I still bench pressed my whole career. I just didn't bench every single week. I would throw it in every 3 weeks or so. Just because, like I said, I was trying to bring up my upper pecs, and that's where most people's weakness lies. Can you do decline? Yeah, I just didn't feel like it was really, I felt like, I don't know. I felt like I wasn't really working my pecs as much. And once again, my priority was upper chest, and that was the development I really wanted to gain. So I kind of let off of it. I don't think there's any bad movement. I think there's some movements that if you do them all the time, they can definitely predispose you to having injuries. But if you mix it in every once in a while, I think you'd be fine.
Let's so again, we teased that there were a couple of Dorian related questions. Is it true, it's from bodybuilding and wrestling, is it true what Dorian said that if you do high intensity cardio on the spin bike, 2 minutes warm up, then 20 seconds fast, 1 minute normal, 3 to 5 rounds, a total of 6 minutes is equal to 45 minutes on the treadmill? Can that be included on days when you feel that you're, I guess the days that you're up to it, not on leg day, for example?
You know, the problem is a lot of people compare caloric burning cardio-wise to try to equate like steady state cardio, like you would do walking on a treadmill with no incline, versus high intensity, like, you know, Stairmaster or Stepper, or even just super like walking on a steep incline, you know, fast on a treadmill. The problem is yes, you're going to burn more calories doing a higher intensity cardio for a short period duration of time. And you might burn the same calories. You might do 45 minutes on a treadmill with steady state versus high intensity. You can do 15, 20 minutes and get the same caloric burn. But what's that? What do calories mean? I mean, what the machine is calculating it, you know, based on what? Your energy output. The problem is that when your intensity level gets too high, okay, in any activity you do, whether it be sprinting, whether it be deadlifting, squatting, okay, or running on that stupid Stairmaster, okay, when the intensity level is too high, your body cannot use fat as a fuel source. It must use carbohydrates because it cannot generate ATP quick enough using the Krebs cycle, which involves fatty acid oxidation. So yes, you're burning calories, but you're burning carbohydrate calories. You're not burning stored fat calories. And that's the problem I have. We're not doing cardio to get ourselves in cardiovascular shape. We're doing cardio to burn body fat because we want to look a certain way. So if you want to ensure that your body is only burning stored body fat, you do steady state cardio, long, slow distance, we call it. A little longer, but slower, steady state. And that means that all that cardio you're doing is only targeting stored body fat because it's using fats as a fuel source. If you're on a low carb diet, even if you're not on a low carb diet and you're doing high intensity cardio, you're using some of the carbs you're eating. So you're actually having to eat carbohydrates to fuel your aerobics, you know, or your cardio, which is silly because you want to burn stored body fat during the cardio. Now, do you get a little bit of a metabolic afterburn? Yeah, you do because you're going so fast, but there's more of a risk, number one, of losing muscle, especially when you're in a very depleted state and your body fat levels are very low. And number two, it's you know, your risk of injury is also higher as well. So I'm a big steady state cardio. I'd rather have people do a little longer bouts of cardio with lower intensity to ensure and maximize that they burn fat only.
Interesting one here from Stephen Bateman. How do you think the physiques of Arnold's era would have been different if they counted macros? So I want to go back to when I first saw Pumping Iron. I remember I went to you and I was like, you know, some of the things they were eating, you know, in that documentary, I'm like, today's athletes, that's the kind of stuff that they would totally stay away from, especially, you know, like day of contest, like Arnold sitting there eating toast for breakfast or whatever. What were, I guess, the dietary habits and maybe some of the ways that diets were measured back then as compared to now?
You got to remember, first of all, day of the competition, you can pretty much eat whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. I mean, as long as you're not drinking a ton of fluid, because your body just sucks it right up. I mean, I had people doing eggs and, you know, pancakes and stuff like that a lot of times the morning of the show. So that breakfast that Arnold was having probably was not a good indicator of what they were eating, you know, the rest of their diet. They ate very low carbs back then. A lot of them just ate like protein and fat, and they really didn't even know anything about fat. So they were eating a lot of like bacon, they were eating, you know, red meat a lot, and they were, you know, they would use heavy creams, a lot of them who were doing those type of diets. And then when the diets kind of started progressing more towards the late 70s, early 80s, I think that was the era of the carbohydrate diets, which was basically very, very lean sources of protein, almost zero fat in anything. and some carbs. Not a lot of carbs, but people ate carbs. They ate potatoes and sweet potatoes and rice. And that's when I kind of got into bodybuilding in the late 80s. That was the diet. It was 0 fat, high protein, moderate carbs. And when you want to lose weight, you lower your carbs more, and you never raise fat. I mean, people just didn't eat fat. And then, I'm probably one of the people who brought the science of fat into bodybuilding. But there were guys like Lee Haney that always ate a little fat. He was always talking about he'd eat 2 egg yolks, which is like sacrilegious. No one would eat the yolk. We'd throw them out, right? So Haney always knew kind of that you needed some fat in your diet, but I don't think he understood the science of what was going on or the extent of it. But I discovered when I put fat back into my diet that I started seeing gains. I started seeing my body looking better. So extremes was always the, history of the diet of the bodybuilder. It just changed from Arnold Zero with 0 carbs, but higher fats, but fats that we wouldn't eat today, like just, saturated fats mostly coming from dairy or meats. Then they went through to the carbohydrate era, and then they came back to what we eat today, which is kind of like more balanced diet. So we're eating high protein, moderate fats. Most people are, at least, coming from predominantly healthy sources of fats like monounsaturated fats, like the macadamia nut oil we sell, essential fatty acids, fish oil, evening primrose oil, and putting some carbs in for people who can handle them, and then lower carbs for people. So the carbs become the swing nutrient. I think people understand now that you need protein, a lot of protein. You need some fat in your diet, but the carbohydrates become that nutrient that we can play around with. And some guys can eat a lot and get in shape, and some people can eat, some people need to eat almost 0, or 0 to get in shape. And that's the swing nutrient. And that's really the true science of bodybuilding. So everyone always did macros. People always figured macros. I mean, even back in Arnold's day, they knew how much protein they were eating. They knew how much fat they were eating, and they knew how many grams of carbohydrates they were eating. They just the fad of the day was this or that, or as it changed. Nowadays, I think we got it right. Nowadays, it's about finding which diet works for your type of body: higher carbs, lower carbs, higher fat, lower fat. Protein is always consistently going to be high. And then just playing along with that, and being open-minded and being knowledgeable about the fact that we do need fat, we do need protein in the diet, and then carbohydrates are just a fuel source that some people need more of, some people need less of, and you have to just figure out for yourself what works for you. And that's where we're at now. It's an interesting evolution of how diet has changed from the 70s, 60s, 70s to today. But it really all involves just knowledge. People didn't have the knowledge. There wasn't an internet to look things up on. You might be able to read it in Joe Weider's magazines, but whatever they published, that's what you read. No one really had other sources. There wasn't a lot of people, a lot of learned people giving scientifically based, diet information back then. And so it's great. That's called, how things evolve. And that's why guys today are bigger. It's not just the drugs. It's knowledge of diet. It's knowledge of training. But more so, I think it's the diet and supplement knowledge that we have today, and protein powders that we have available that just weren't there years and years ago.
So last week, or it was a couple of weeks ago, actually, you and Lee were talking about the latest with Nick Walker, and obviously now it's public knowledge that he is going to work again with Matt Jansen, his previous coach. Obviously there's been further subsequent developments, regarding obviously not just his coaches, but also his supplement company. So, I don't want to get too much into the details, but the question is, do you think Nick Walker is leaving a bad taste in the mouths of future coaches and sponsors with, I guess, the musical chairs in both areas? If you want to give your opinion, again, young bodybuilder, someone who's obviously very much on the rise. And we live in a world now where there is going to be change. There is going to be someone who wants to try different things. Lee Priest made a point a couple of weeks ago on Iron Rage, saying that, to his belief that, again, you work with a coach, you play out the process. What he sees today is that athlete goes, coach, or, well, I don't like how I look today, I'm going to go back to this, or I want to go back to that. Your opinion on if this kind of a development might leave or might, have anyone being cautious with wanting to do with a young athlete like a Nick Walker going forward?
Well, you know what? In defense of Nick, here's the issue. Nick is a hot commodity right now. So these guys that want to attach themselves to someone and use that someone to help market the rest of their coaching, okay, they'll pay Nick to work with them, these guys. And I wouldn't doubt that some of them haven't already. Okay. In other words, I'm his coach. Nick Walker's a freak. Nick doesn't even need a coach. Okay. To be honest with you, he has a coach to keep his head straight. And that's good, because it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror and really give yourself good advice when you get close to a show, because you start overdoing and underdoing things. So that's why he's got a coach. He pretty much knows, I'm sure by now, how to peak his body and what he needs to do. And he knows how to train. He doesn't need anyone going to the gym with him and counting reps. But it's nice and comforting to know there's another set of eyes there that are looking at you. So these coaches, most of them out there, they may think, well, Nick is going has switched coaches, but they don't care. They'll be the first person to say, Nick, I'll pay you. I want to work with you, And so Nick has that ability to kind of do what he wants, basically. It's like a celebrity out there. These celebrities can do whatever they want. If they have to switch assistants, personal assistants every month, who cares? They're paying, you know what I mean? And people will beg them to be their personal assistants because of that. And so I don't think it's leaving a bad taste. I think Nick has to use or has to work with someone who he feels comfortable with. Now, if it's someone that he's going to tell him what he wants to hear, and that works for Nick and he looks great because of it, then that's great. Then that's what he needs. Really, it's up to him. There's no right or wrong decision as far as picking a coach. It would be a different story if Nick didn't know what he was doing, and people are like, what is this guy? He's switching every other day. I think like Ramy had that problem early on, and I think that rubbed people the wrong way, but it didn't stop any coaches from working with Ramy because everyone wanted to attach their name to Ramy, right? So same thing with Nick. If he wasn't a great bodybuilder, these coaches wouldn't even get involved with him because they'd be like, this guy's a headache. But he's really not. He just wants someone who sees the prep process from his perspective and is going to help him doing it his way. So he has a way he wants to do it. The coach has to be willing to do it his way and be that second set of eyes. And I think that's what Nick was looking for. And he had it with Matt. They obviously had a dispute or an argument. And really, it seemed like it stemmed basically over the fact that Matt thought he shouldn't do the Arnold Classic last year. Nick wanted to do it. When Nick realized he could have won it and he lost a lot of money, I think he got a bad taste in his mouth. And they kind of just, went their own ways. I know Dominic, who he had hired, and who worked with him this whole year. And I know Dominic did some good work with him and they made some great gains. And I'm sure Nick is very, gracious and happy that he got that benefit of working with another coach and maybe just feels better going into the Olympia, with something that he already has done, well with, which is Matt Jensen. And so there's no right and wrong here. And so I don't blame anyone. And I think that once again, Nick, it's up to him who he wants to work with and who he feels comfortable with. Maybe he wanted to try something different in the off season. And then he realized, all right, you know what, going into the Olympia, maybe Dom and I are not on the same page with certain things. I know Matt knows, likes and, agrees with the process that we used last year. I felt good with that. I look great with that process. I'm going to repeat it with him. And I haven't talked to Nick, but that's more than likely probably what happened.
Take a couple more questions. Your thoughts on tattoos and their impact on overall presentation or placings. Now, I mean, I'll add in that you have athletes that have tattoos, but the tanning companies are so great at concealing a lot of the tattoos. So when you see the bodybuilder up there, it's not very noticeable, but let's just assume off his premise, assuming they're very prominent, very noticeable, can that have some sort of a sway in the judges' decisions?
I don't like when the tanning companies try to cover up the tattoo with makeup because it never looks good on stage. Yes, you hide the tattoo, but the makeup completely obscures the muscles. So you're better off just getting a really good spray tan. If you have tattoos, they're going to be there. The judges do not care about tattoos anymore. They used to, okay? Back when I first started, no one had tattoos. As a matter of fact, guys would have tattoos removed if they had them because the judges just didn't like tattoos. Nowadays, it's kind of like almost acceptable. There's women with like more tattoos than guys have sometimes. I've seen bikini girls. I can't even believe how many tattoos they have. Now, my personal, belief on that, and I have tattoos, but I have them in obscure places like on my ankles and, nothing that's obscuring a major body part. I think if you're going to put tattoos on and you're planning on competing and you haven't done it yet, I would not put them in places that obscure definition. I wouldn't put them across my chest or my abs. I think that's very distracting. I think even in the middle of your back is distracting, because it's blocking, something. Now, if you have really, really dark skin, if you're African-American or you're Middle Eastern, you have really dark skin, a lot of times you can't even see the tattoos. Like Chris Cormier has 1 million tattoos. I never saw them on stage because he just has dark skin and you couldn't see him through there. But if you have like really pale skin and you have tattoos in places that are kind of obscure, I think that's a mistake. And I would say hold off on those crazy like sleeves and stuff like that until you're done competing. Will the judges mark it down? No, but it's just human nature that if there's something blocking an obscuring definition on stage, it just doesn't aesthetically look right. And who has perfect symmetry in their tattoos? No one does. So remember, bodybuilding is about symmetry. If it throws off the harmony of how your body flows because it's disruptive, the tattoo, it's definitely going to count against you. Judges won't tell you that, but it will count against you because it's just when someone looks at it, it's just not pleasing to the eye. So think about it. If you guys are going to get tattoos, put them in places that are less distracting, ankles, wrists, maybe forearms. I wouldn't put anything in the major core area of your body. I think it's just very distracting. Once again, it's a different world now. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you what I think from an aesthetic standpoint. I'm not against tattoos. I'm just against them in places that will obscure, especially if you want to compete. We lost you. I can't hear you. I think you're
yeah, sorry about my kid is running around right now. Okay. So
we understand.
All right. So Nico Cantemir, 4 weeks. I'm gonna have a competition. I'm losing weight really fast. What do you recommend? 1 cheat meal, 1 refill day with all the meals and carbs. What would you advise to somebody who's bearing toward the competition but losing weight at a completely rapid pace?
Yeah, I mean, I've had that happen. I have a couple, guys I put on a diet and all of a sudden they just drop it really fast. And I'm like, and I'm giving them cheat meals every couple of days and it's still not slowing them down. I just have to raise their carbohydrate content. Usually I get protein and fat right. I mean, that's a formula basically. And I've given that formula out before. But carbohydrates, you can never predict. Some guys, they don't even eat a lot in the off season. Then all of a sudden they go into pre-contest and carbs seem to be speeding their metabolism up. So in those people, I sometimes have to give guys 400 grams of carbs, to eat a day, in addition to a cheat meal every couple of days, just to slow them down. What usually happens is eventually they plateau their metabolism. It slows down enough, and then you can start, cutting back food again. But you have to go by what you see. That's why, whatever diet I give someone to start off on, and any coach will tell you this, is just a starting point. Every starting point changes from competitor to competitor. Some people, they can keep the same diet almost the whole time. And maybe you're just playing around with cardio and some fat burners. Other guys, it's like you're always changing their diet. It's like forever changing because their bodies just go through, as the weeks progress, they get super fast metabolism, then they may slow down. Some people's bodies don't burn fat at all. And you can almost feed them zero and they lose nothing. And then you got to feed those people more food to kind of return their metabolism to normal. So there's no rules. That's why it's important that people send you updates. I start off with updates every, 3 days or so, twice a week. And then if I need it, I might have an update every day from a person. If I just think their metabolism is out of control and I need to, keep an eye on it because I don't want them losing 15 pounds in a week. That's obviously going to be some muscle there in addition to water. So once again, every person is different. There's no rules set in stone. It's what you see and how you as the coach respond to it. I've given some guys like the last 2 weeks from a show, they're so lean and their metabolism is so fast. I'm giving them an extra burger and fry meal every single day just to quell their metabolism and just keep them from losing too much weight. But, other people, I'm starving the last 2 weeks and they're doing tons of cardio. It just really depends on who you're working with.
Loma Sasteva, any quick fixes to get rid of muscle soreness? I have a powerlifting competition in a couple of days. I'm sort any general tips that you would, I guess you have used yourself or advised for anyone just to get a quick fix on muscle soreness?
If you're excessively sore, especially 2 days after, which is called delayed muscle onset, delayed muscle soreness onset, it could be that you're overtraining, you're not taking enough days off. If you just started back in the gym, that could just be because, your body's, it's like, your body just is not used to it. It's in shock. I did my first workout in like 4.5 weeks yesterday at the gym, and I didn't go super heavy. Ironically, I was very strong for some reason. And sometimes that happens. If you take a nice break, you go back. The first time you go back, the first day, you're crazy strong. And you got to be careful you don't hurt yourself. I'm a little creaky today. Like I feel like I worked out. And usually I don't feel sore at all normally, But I feel like I worked out, and which is a good feeling. I like that feeling. So for me, that's normal. But if you're excessively sore, and you've been training regularly, something's wrong. It means you probably need to take a couple of days off. But if you haven't trained legs ever, and you go to the gym and train legs, and then the next day you almost can't stand up out of your bed, or you can't sit on the toilet bowl, that's normal because you just haven't trained. So it's that first week back is brutal. So that's why I tell people, don't go too crazy. Even if you feel stronger, don't go too crazy. Take it easy. That's why I did mostly machines. I did a little bit of incline bench press, but after that, mostly machines. Plus, I can't put my foot on the ground, so I have to make sure I don't, put any weight on that foot that I had surgery on. So, which, by the way, I got my cast changed today, and I think I have another 3 weeks in this cast, and then they're going to put me in a walking boot and hopefully start walking. The thing with feet and bone stuff that they do is that you cannot not walk on it at all. Like you would think, well, maybe I'll just take 18 weeks and let it heal even more. Well, no, because what happens is if you don't put pressure on the bone gets weaker and it starts losing density. So you have to, as soon as that initial surgery is healed, you have to start really loading it slowly, obviously, so that the bone can then start building itself up. The bone is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it becomes less dense and it starts hollowing itself out because it doesn't need all that bone density there. So I will hopefully within 3 weeks be starting to walk, with crutches lightly and then putting some pressure on that. Hopefully everything supposedly looks good on the X-ray right now. I have a lot of hardware. I look like, if you guys remember the $6 Million Man back in the day, I look like I have a bionic foot because I have so many screws and plates and everything in there and rods and look, if it works, I'm happy. I'm definitely going to set the metal detectors up at the airport. That's for sure, though.
What was the quote? We have the technology. We can. Yes.
We have the ability to make the world's first bionic man. Steve Austin will be that man. Dave Palumbo will be the second man. There we
go. So this may be more of a general guideline. I don't know how you break it down as far as your clients are concerned, but a good testosterone dose per week for bulking and for cutting.
I believe the same dose is necessary for both. So, if you want a potent dose that doesn't go beyond, where you're going to start getting more side effects than you're going to get benefits, I find the sweet spot always was that 1,000 milligram per week of testosterone dose. It seemed to be ideal. 750 works, but I found that 1,000 worked better, and I didn't get any more side effects from 750 to 1,000. When I went to 1,250, I found more side effects, fluid retention, maybe sometimes you feel a little flu-like, but everyone's body is different. I know guys that could take 2 grams of test a week and they don't get any side effects from it. So for my body, about 1,000 was the sweet spot. And I feel that for most people, that should be more than enough. And you're going to get the least amount of side effects if you can do that. Once you start bumping it past that and you start holding excessive water, it really raises your blood pressure a lot. So for me, pre-contest or off-season, 1,000 milligrams per week combined with anabolics, obviously, is going to be the right amount. But once again, depends what you're using too. Some guys are using like fast-acting testosterone, and they think they could take less of that. I didn't find that to be the case. And I found when I used like propionate or test suspension, which were fast-acting testosterone, I felt like I was up and down and up and down. When I was up, I felt great. When I was down, I just kind of felt crappy. and my skin would break out a lot. So I always did better with I think everyone does better with long-acting esters, to be honest with you. As long as you have high levels of testosterone, what does it matter if you're on a long-acting or short-acting? It's just easier to get steady levels of testosterone if you're on long-acting, because, you know, the stuff stays in your system for a long time. If you take a short-acting, you get peaks and valleys, and you don't want that. That's not how hormones work best in the body.
I'll take one more from. We actually got a lot of clomid-related questions. This one's from Fat Freak Hustler. Love the name. Is it possible to gain back fertility with clomid only? As I guess in his country, there's a restriction to get HCG and HMG.
You know, to be honest, the magic part of the baby making protocol that I give out, that I designed and tested on myself first, and it worked. I have three beautiful, healthy kids. So knock on wood. Works mostly because of one compound, and that compound's HMG, or human menopausal gonadotropin. That is the hormone that mimics FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone. And what it does in men is it tells the testicles to produce sperm. So it tells those Sertoli cells in the testicles, produce sperm. That's what you want, right? I mean, HCG stimulates testosterone in the testicles via the Leydig cells, which bathe the Sertoli cells. So indirectly it stimulates them, but it's not a direct stimulus. I found that the HMG is the most potent. Now, they make synthetic FSH now, which is the same thing as HMG. It's just synthetically. It's like comparing the old cadaver growth hormone to the new synthetic growth hormone. It's the same compound. It just, they make it synthetically now. The problem is it's very expensive. And even if I send a lot of people over to our good friends at TitanMedicalCenter.com, they do sell synthetic FSH, and they can prescribe that by prescription. It's still a lot cheaper than if you go to a fertility specialist who will, prescribe Pergonal, which is the brand name of FSH or HMG, and it's cost a fortune. Okay. So you're better off going to them. Now, there are other means, there are other, places that sell HMG. And if you know where to get it, I mean, you'll probably pay less money that way. But if you're looking to get, and if you're trying to have a kid, spare no expense, I tell people, because you know what? Whatever it costs you to have the kid is nothing compared to what it's going to cost after you have the kid, diapers and formula and food and college and all the other, crazy stuff. Soccer camps and all the other stuff you gotta pay for along the way. So go to TitanMedicalCenter.com. You can get their synthetic FSH. That's the most important component. Yes, HCG is great on top of that, but if you had to skip HCG, it wouldn't be such a big thing if you had the FSH or the HMG, same thing. Clomid is nice because it blocks estrogen receptors in the brain. It allows the hypothalamus to kind of turn itself back on. So that's always good at 50 milligrams per day. And then, of course, I always recommend, if you can get it, injectable glutathione, because it increases the motility of the sperm. So the sperm will swim better. A lot of times people have enough sperm cells, but they just don't swim enough. And, a good quality multivitamin will help with sperm morphology. So in other words, what the sperm cells look like under the microscope, are they well formed? Because if they're not well formed, then a lot of people who have poorly formed sperm, they just won't fertilize the egg. So they swim, their numbers are good, but they don't actually work. So I always put people on my demineralized formula, which really is helpful because of the high vitamin and mineral content in there. And if you do everything like I tell you, and I send this protocol out for free, people email me, I must send 10 of them out a day. I swear to you. I can't believe how many people can't have kids. 10 a day. That's 70 a week I probably send out. All over the world, people contact me and say, Dave, send me the baby making protocol. And you know what? I haven't had one person tell me that it hasn't worked. So sometimes it takes, it could take a year sometimes for people who have really suppressed sperm production, but it works. And like I said, I'm more than happy to give it out. I love to help people who are in situations where they feel hopeless. I have a lot of people who go to fertility specialists. They spend $35,000 on IVF, in vitro fertilization, the test tube baby type thing, and it hasn't worked. And then they went on the baby making protocol and they got their wife pregnant like in a month or two after that. So I think the problem is that the fertility specialists don't prescribe enough of this stuff. You need to take 75 IUs of the HMG FSH every other day. continuously until you get your wife or girlfriend pregnant. That's just the way it works that I found. And I have no problem revealing all this because I want to help people and I want people to be able to have kids. So.
And that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button. As always, we appreciate your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.